And so we begin my working life. And so, um, as I say, I left school on the 21st of July 1967. I went for an interview at the Co-op in Chapel Street in Rugby, and the chap who interviewed me, it was my last week at work basically, and he said, well, he says, have next week off, he says, and then start the week over. So most people get a gap year. Well, I got a gap week, and so that was that. So I started work on Monday the 30th July. I was actually 15, my 15th birthday was on actually the 7th of July. I remember that day very well because at school, we went to the Royal Show. Now, most people remember the Royal Show at Stoneleigh Abbey, which is near Leamington Spa and Coventry. So, July 1967. I was searching it on the internet, and you find that it was called the beginning of the Summer of Love. So in July 1967, it was a historic counterculture phenomenon where up to 100,000 young people, hippies and artists converged on San Francisco to celebrate peace and love and music. It redefined the generation, popularized psychedelic rock and sparkled worldwide cultural shifts. And we still feel some of that today. It was a huge change, the mid to late 60s, in the concept of things. Things were changing. The generation that had gone through the war, we who were we were known as the war, not the war babies, but the first generation after the war, and so that was us. Anyway, the Beatles released a song on my birthday actually, which is July the 7th. Which is Ringo Starr's birthday. He was born 10 years before me in 1942. And the song was called All You Need Is Love. And it was penned by John Lennon. So I remember that also very well. And so with great hope and high expectations, we thought we could just get by with life. I just love everybody, that sort of thing. So anyway, as I say, I started work on the 30th July 1967 at Bilton Co-op as a shop assistant. My wages were £5, 6 shillings a week. Now, according to the Bank of England inflation calculator, this equals, in today's value, £99 a week. But my wages then, which would have been £5,148 a year. So I came home with £4.76. That was £73.70 in today's language. And I gave £1 to my mum for board and lodging. So I was left with £3.76. So that's equivalent to £58.90 today. So my basic working, living income for a year would be 3,063 pence. Now I looked it up, and the current minimum wage for somebody under 18 is £8 per hour, and I could only calculate it on 35 hours, and I was working 40 hours a week then. So 35 hours at £8, that's £280 per week. So you're on a salary of £14,560 a week. So you take home would be £242 a week, and you'd be on a salary, you'd have an income of £12,570, and I had a working income of 3,063 pence. I didn't notice it too much at the time. You just sort of got on with it. Anyway, so I started my job. Mr. Brinklow was my manager at Bilton Co-op, and seemed quite a jovial sort of character. He said, yes, call me sir on the first day. I thought, that's nice. And anyway, my first task he gave me was to clean the windows, the front windows, which was a sort of display outside those. You had the windows, and then there would be tins and things, sort of what was on special offer and that sort of thing. That's how they did it in those days. So my first task was to clean the front windows, and he gave me some Winderley, which was a bottle of pink liquid that you put onto the windows. You put that on, you wipe it off, and it cleans the window. So it didn't go very well actually, because I put the bottle I had some step ladders, and I put the bottle on the top of the step ladders, and I just walked up the step ladders with my cloth in my hand. And of course, I kicked over the bottle of Winderlede. It fell on the floor and it splashed everywhere, pink liquid on the pavement. And anyway, the manager came out to see how I was getting on. He said, "Oh, that didn't go very well." So that was a good start, wasn't it? And so talking about starting at the bottom, which I had to do. I mean, I was known as the shop assistant. Well, we were all shop assistants actually in the shop. Anyway, and so once a month they had a large fridge in the warehouse, and it had bacon, and they kept the cheese and the butter and what they called the fats in there, and I had to take them all out, and I got to get a scrubbing brush and a bucket and water and scrub that fridge totally inside. So I had a lot more energy in those days, but that was that. And then one of my jobs was sweeping up the floor at the end of the day, and Mr. Brinklow caught me once, and I was sweeping away, and I'd got a hand in my pocket. And just like standing in front of the policeman, wasn't it? He says, "Hands out the pocket." So there we are. I had sort of a casual view of life. And another one of my early jobs, they had a greengrocer's next door, but we sold potatoes. We used to get these 56-pound bags. We'd put them in a sort of it was sort of a machine, well, not a machine, it was just sort of put them into something where you could sort of scoop out the. So we had £5 and £10 bags of potatoes. He said, "Right, weigh those," he says, and we sold them at obviously the prices. And I know I got it in my head that you know, I mean, basically you had the scale, so you had the £5 weight, and then you had the scale, and you put the spuds in. Now normally you just put it and you'd put an extra bit in, and it would just sink down, and you think, well, that's it, it's £5. But for some reason I thought, well, I've got to sort of weigh them a bit, and I tried to get them bang on £5 or £10, and so that's it. Anyway, the weights and measures came along, the inspectors, and they checked various things, your cheese, stuff that you weighed in the shop, and they weighed my potatoes. Well, some of them, if not all of them, were short weight. Well, they went to the manager and said, well, he said, "Well, he's only a young lad, he's only just started." I think he managed to talk them out us getting a fine, so that was that. And then it wasn't long when I was working in the shop, and they had what they call mobile groceries. The co-op used to have three. They were like, well, they were like the size of a bus or a large van, and they'd go around the villages. So all of a sudden, I was told to go on this grocery van one day, and because the normal chap was off. And so I thought, well, I'll help out. So I went on the grocery van, and instead of having a till or anything like that, you could tot up. You had to do it all mental arithmetic. Well, my mental arithmetic wasn't brilliant, wasn't it? And so we soon, I said, stuck with the book and trying out. It took me ages to do it, and sure would have stretched the chap's patience. Anyway, I thought, well, I'd do better for myself, and I thought, well, I'd get a job at Sainsbury's, which is in the town. My mother actually worked there at the time. I thought, well, you know, get more money, and you can get a Saturday off once a month, I think. Oh, that suited me, because I was working every Saturday. I was a bit grieved about that, to be honest. Anyway, so I applied, and those days they sent you down to the office in Blackfriars in London. They paid you fare to go down, and I went down and did some sort of examination or something. Anyway, I failed that, so I had to carry on at the co-op. So that was that. And then I was interested in motorbikes. Got interested in motorbikes at school. Of course, never thought I could afford a car, but I thought I might be able to afford a motorbike. And through a series of things, there was this motorbike for sale for 27 quid, which didn't sound too bad. But if you saw it, I mean, it had been in a crash, and the front of it has well, there was no lamp, for instance, and there's I'm not too sure how I was connected. Anyway, I bought this, basically a load of scrap. Bought it for £27. It's 442 in today's currency. Anyway, and so I got that home, and I thought one day, because it did work and you could actually ride it, just I think. And so I thought, well, I'd ride it up and down the street. Well, do you remember I told you we moved from our house in Mellish Road to Bilton Road, and we had some police houses at the just down the road. But of course, I was toddling up and down on my bike, and a policeman. They actually had policemen in the police houses, and I think somebody gone to see his friend or something. Anyway, he caught me on the motorbike on the road, and he then started asking me some questions. He says, "Have you got a license?" I said, "No." And he looked, he said, "There was no tax. Have you got tax?" I said, "No." "Have you got insurance?" I said, "No." And he says, "Well, no front light, no front number plate." I mean, in those days, you had to have a number plate on the front mudguard as well as the back. Basically, he threw the book at me, and he then, through a process of time, I was summoned to the magistrates' court, where my dad had to come with me because I was still a minor. I mean, at those days you could have ridden it. It was, I think it was about a 125 or 175. You could ride a motorbike under 250 at the age of 16 and everything else. But I was still 15, and so anyway, we went to the magistrates' court in Rugby, which is now Railway Terrace those days, and I got a £15 fine, which in today's money again is £246, and I was banned for driving for a year. Well, I hadn't even got a license, so I was banned. So that was the way things went. How the money just flowed, easy come, easy go. That was sort of my attitude. Anyway, I went to Overslade Co-op, and in September 1968, and things got a bit better there in the sense that I wasn't just the boy scrubbing floors and sweeping up and doing all the odd jobs, and that they began to put me onto bacon and cheese and cooked meats, and I did a lot better. And I was thought of a lot better. I was treated a lot better actually, and so there's not much I can say about that time. It was sort of less dramatical, and by and large, I worked my life. You know, I still was going to church. I loved the Lord. I still wanted to serve Him and everything else. But that was my beginning of my work career.